The gentleman in the front right here.
My question is to anybody who will take it. We are looking at this missing middle summit, and I think the direction of capital, the perception is direction is from this end to that end, to Africa, for example. My experience is in Africa is that there is local private equity which is misdirected. So you have a lot of local investors who are investing in minibuses and building bars and building, but it's private equity, which is available. So what are your thoughts or experience in trying to tap that particular private equity?
Well, I'll take this, even though we haven't actually, well, I guess we have in the 3Fs, we've had some of our investors have been in South Africa, but I think you raise a really special point that really hasn't been brought up yet, is the resources in Africa, because we're all here right now. And from a personal aspect, our top developers and our top designers are South African. So there's absolutely no reason why Mad Mimi couldn't have been thought up while I was in South Africa, raised the funding there. There's every bit of opportunity for, and I can only speak for my own type of company being an online-based company, but I'd say there's absolutely every opportunity there for any entrepreneurs.
Great.
Let me have this. I'll try to break down the question in 3 steps. African capital. The first thing, take South Africa and take the rest. I mean, we're talking about sub-Saharan Africa. You take South Africa out, single out, and then you take the other part of sub-Saharan Africa. South Africa has a pretty well-developed, capital market. So finding a local, raising money within South Africa for South African entity, I think becomes much, much easier. I know many friends who've actually, they were able to actually get their seed money from South Africa. The rest of Africa is a little bit different. The rest of Africa is a little bit different, and then what you see there is 2 types of capital. The first one is what I call the formal capital with, the private equity, the formal private equity. And unfortunately, the private equities that you find in Africa, and I won't name them, but we all know them, they're actually looking for established company. I see them doing more the job of the bank than that of the risk capital. So they will be investing into EcoBank, who is an established company. You might buy some shares there. It's certainly an investment in the African environment, but it's certainly not a startup investment. So you have that sort. And then you have what we call the informal capital, which is, the bus driver. My uncle have, several buses, and he's driving it, he's making cash. But the psychology behind this type of investment is very different. People tend to invest, especially entrepreneur investors, angel investors, they tend to invest in what they know, what they've done before. And the problem that we have in Africa is you don't have large-scale entrepreneurs, the Steve Jobs of the world, or who have enough experience or enough capital to be able to put money in new ventures coming out. So when you go back to the bus driver and say, it's very difficult for him to actually comprehend that, to think that, you bring it a technology company and he's going to be able to, multiply the investment.
Well, I think it's a problem of culture. It's not in the culture in most places in Africa to invest in companies, in just startups, basically. I see that happening in France, too. Where, you look at France, there's no way that most of the stuff that's happening in Silicon Valley probably could be happening. So we just have to be very thoughtful of the fact that, people think in a different manner. When I think of, when you go to New York, oftentimes New York, Milan, or any of these places, you see the black vendors on the street. Most of them are Senegalese. Well, guess what? They're sending, I have been told, $250 million a year back home to Senegal, this tiny country of 14 million people. So my brain is going into like, okay, how can we get those people organized so that $250 million, it's more than most small private, more than small VC firms in this country. So what if I can work with them and we can try and get that money situated somewhere, and we put the right parameters around it, and that money, instead of now going home in forms of remittances that, let's be frank, ends up buying Chinese-made goods and things like that. How if I was able to catalyze those people and their money into, okay, guys, $250 million we're going to invest in that company, that company, that company, that company, that company back home. The money is there. So let's just try and work with that.